Welcome everybody. This is our second Zoom session here for the Web Developer Orientation class and for the summer version of the Full Stack Certificate program, kind of kicking off and getting started. We're kind of doing a dual session this morning, so we're covering topics from both the Web Developer Orientation and the Web Programming 1 class, in which most of you are enrolled in both. And if you're not, you might want to consider doing that because they are designed to run together. Today we are going to be working on Unit 1, and I'm just going to scroll down here and click into the folder to show you that this is one way to get into a folder. And typically when I have my course shells, I have to let you know that I don't have this much content sitting at the top where you have to scroll down to them. You guys kind of heard my web philosophy the other day. As a designer, I always like to make it as easy as possible for people to find stuff on the screen. If you have your users hunting for content on your website, you got a problem. And I'd like to put that in my course shells as well. So I also put links to all the unit folders in the left sidebar, just in case you're somewhere down on the screen and don't want to scroll up. So go ahead and click into that Unit 1 folder one way or the other. So just get in there and start taking a look around. Now, this first unit folder with, I would say the first one that has tangible content in it, that, something for us to actually work on that's of, I'd say, importance, and I would argue of significant importance for many of us. But the format that I use in most of my course shells will basically be this. So I will always give the unit a title and kind of whatever the grand topic is. And for us, being that all of us are moving into these IT careers and learning about IT, I kind of have to establish a baseline with everybody, because some people come into these programs and, you know what, frankly, I've had people come in and they've never touched a computer. And I know some people in this day and age get shocked by that. But when I first started teaching, 15 plus years ago, that was not uncommon at all. I would step into the classroom and say, how many of you have never used a computer before? And I'd get like maybe a third or half the people would be raising their hands. And we're not talking like 50 years ago in the Stone Ages. We're talking in the 2000s, so I think that's amazing. And now at this point, I think society has really transitioned where if it's not a full-blown computer that you have, you probably have a tablet or a phone and have some way to get on the internet. However, because you have those capabilities, doesn't mean you know what you're doing. And I'm not sure if you guys resonate with that or not, but there's plenty of people that can hop up on a computer, jump up on Facebook, hit their YouTube videos, maybe send an email, go onto Amazon and buy a bunch of stuff they don't need and get it shipped to their door, but ask them to where they save their homework on their hard drive and they can't find it. Now, as IT people, that's kind of problematic. At the very least, you should be able to find a file. So that's one of the first things I start with, is I want to make sure that everybody understands how to manage their files. And frankly, it takes a little bit of practice. And honestly, it's not one of those things that you really get taught when you use a computer. People say, well, good, you're on Facebook, just click on stuff, you'll figure it out, right? But managing a file is a little bit different, and managing it on a level that I would call professional is significantly different. So the way that our operating systems are put together these days, whether it's a Windows machine or a Macintosh, and frankly, even Linux machines, have somewhat dumbed down interfaces for regular consumers. So if like I create a file and I'm going to look for it, I'll bring up a file folder. Okay, and I happen to have one, I'll actually open a new one. So it's going to open up a file folder. Of course, it opens up on my other screen. And what it does basically is, with Windows and the Macintosh, they have like what they call these quick access menus. So like whatever you worked on last will pop up in the window. And think about it, right? If I'm working on a document or looking at some photographs or listening to some music, chances are that's the next thing I'm probably going to look at again. And so they put it on what we call these like quick lists. So most recently accessed files and folders, and you can go in there and find your stuff. Some people will also start placing their stuff in the documents folder. So some people will get a documents folder on their machine, it's automatically there. And most of the programs that you will open up and you click save. So let's say I brought up Microsoft Word and I create a document, type some stuff in it, and I come up to the file menu and I choose save. Chances are it's going to want to place it in your documents folder, or these days with Microsoft Windows, they're going to try to put it in your OneDrive if you have that linked up to your Windows account. But here's the important thing. Wherever you put your files, you need to know where that is. So I like to tell students that there's some really good strategies for making sure that you do this correctly. The one thing is set up a folder structure to prepare for what you're about to do. So for example, I'm going to close out this document here. I'm going to say don't save for right now. But I'm going to go to my documents folder, and you can see that inside here, there's a whole bunch of stuff. And frankly, I've gotten to the point where I don't really put a lot of stuff in my documents folder because it's not my primary storage anymore. But for a lot of students, it is. Okay, so what you might choose to do is you might say, okay, well, I'm at Gateway taking classes. Why don't I create a Gateway folder? So you can see right here that I do have one. And if you've never created a folder before, so this is like these weird little skills that you kind of take for granted. Can anybody out there tell me, how do I create a folder in here?
You can right click.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, it's okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, and you know what? That's usually my go-to as well. That's pretty funny that you kind of like jinxed each other, right? You both said right click at the same time. But you go into basically any area of the screen and you can right click. But I always tell people, be careful where you right click, because if I right click on top of a folder, I get a different menu than if I right click somewhere else. Do you guys notice that? So if I'm on top of a folder or a file, the right clicks inside of Windows are what we call context sensitive. So you're right clicking relative to whatever object you're right clicking over. And if I right click over a folder, I'll get a different list. And if I right click over, I don't know, a text file, I'll get a slightly different list. But what we're really looking for here is to create a new folder. And I don't see anything here that says create a new folder, right? Even with all this silly stuff that I have on mine. But if I right click on the open area off to the right, or in some cases, you'll have folders that don't have a lot of stuff in there, and you can right click on any open area. And sometimes it's a matter of also changing your view. And you can see how Windows has these menus up here at the top. And sometimes you can change that view. You can go to your view menu and just like switch maybe to list mode or tiles. There's all these different ways you can look at your files. But find an open area, right click, choose new, and then choose folder, and then give it a name. So the folder will pop up, the name's already highlighted, you just start typing. And I understand that most of you probably already know this and maybe have done it before, so it's not to belittle your knowledge. But like I said, I'm always amazed at how few people really know how to do this, and if I consider this kind of like the baby steps of IT, like you got to be able to manage files. So let's just say that I create one for, I already have one called Gateway, so I'll call this one GTC, Gateway Technical College. And then I'm going to press enter on the keyboard or click off with the mouse, and then the name will lock in. All right. So my intent here is to create a structure where I can put all my work for my class. So, or, in this case, classes. So I'm going to go into this folder, and now I know that if I was a full stack student, I have an orientation class, I have a web programming 1 class. Both of them are going to have homework. I'm probably going to have files to store. So why don't I go ahead and create a folder for each one of them? So once again, let's do the same thing. And we're going to try 2 different techniques this time to do this. So the first one will be a right click. I'm just going to right click, and then I'm going to say new again. Come up to folder, and this time I'll say orientation. You can get more particular. You could put in like the course number and section number, full name of the course, whatever works for you. But I'm just going to say orientation. My other class is Web Programming 1, but I'm going to do this one a little bit differently. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take you up to what we call our ribbon bar. And some of you will be looking at your File Explorer window in Windows and not see these buttons natively. And I think that, you know, they introduced that, what we call that ribbon bar, I think with Windows 8. And with Windows 10 as well, when you first come into a File Explorer window, you typically see it like what I'm seeing right now. You don't see the ribbon bar. You only see it when you click the button and then you choose your thing. However, I've been suggesting to students, it's like, well, see how there's a new folder button here, and that's really convenient because I don't have to like right click or find an open spot on the screen. I can just click the button. But you can also lock that toolbar in by just simply clicking this little push pin, if you can see that up here. It's a little hard to see, and you know what? I consider myself an expert, and I didn't see that for like about a year until after, Windows 8 was out, and some student had it up, and I'm like, how do you keep that up on the screen? And he goes, oh, you just push the pin. And and that's how IT is. You can think yourself even the most brilliant person doing this stuff, but having that that capability to like turn that toolbar on and off, I think is pretty handy. Now, my suggestion for all of you is that you turn it on and leave it on. I mean, why not? That's just kind of my thinking on it. So that gives us a separate way to create a new folder. Now, the ribbon bar does have separate menus. So let's just kind of click through them really quick. So you see there's a file menu. And so you can go to specific spots, change your options. The home menu, which is where you end up by default, where most of your common like copy, paste, new folder, rename, delete, all those kind of simple things are here. They also have an interface for sharing, sending your file off to other people, or more complicated sharing environments. And then you also have the view menu. And in my mind, the ones that I use the most are home and view by far. But let's go back to home and click that new folder button and create another new folder. And this one I'm going to call Web PROG. I'm going to abbreviate Programming 1. And yes, there's a Web Programming 2. So and that comes later in the summer if you're in the full stack cert. So you're going to be creating folders and having homework for these two classes. The other thing that you might find helpful, and I showed this in the course shell here as a little bit of an example, and this is kind of more of a what if scenario, is that you create a folder structure that maybe looks something like this. You might find better names to use. You might have different organizational styles, different hierarchies that you use, but some method that makes sense to keep things organized. I have these, folders that I use, and I'm just going to give you an example. Like when I organize my school stuff, I have it on my Google Drive, which is linked up to school servers. The files aren't even on my laptop. How do you like that? They store on the Google Cloud somewhere, but I can pull them in whenever I want. All right, so here's all my school files. You guys thought you had a lot, right? I think I'm up to like a couple hundred gigs worth of school files. And you see what I do is I go through, and any course I teach, I create a folder for it. And then inside the folder, and let's find Web Programming 1. I think that's probably a good one to look at. I have stuff that's pertinent to me. Now, I don't have, a homework folder because, I'm giving the homework, not doing it, although I do it most of the time with you guys. I create folders for every semester. So like if I teach the class, let's see, I taught it last fall, I have my whole folder from last fall, and then I go through and I just start putting my stuff in there, and then that's not even a very good example. If I probably find an older one where I go through and I create the folders that are relative to what you're doing. Now, as students, since you guys are turning in homework and want to keep track of things, to me, it makes a significant amount of sense to follow a structure maybe similar to this. Okay, so whatever naming convention you use, that's up to you. But to me, it makes sense if I'm doing Unit 1 homework, let's put it in a Unit 1 folder. That's just kind of my thinking. Now, I'm going to go back to the folder that I just created, which was in my Documents folder. And let's go into the orientation class now. And I'm just going to practice a little bit. I'm going to create another folder. And let's call it Unit 1. And then I'm going to come inside here. And then whatever homework I have, that's where I'm going to put it. The other thing that I tend to do is I try to name, like, let's just say I had created some sort of a file. And I'm just going to create a text document for now, for example. And let's just call it example. And what I'm trying to demonstrate is it really helps a lot to name your files, what's inside of them. You know, so I know in the old days, when I first got on computers, we had a limit of only 8 characters we could use to name a file. Talk about limiting, you know. So people would come up with these, like if I was doing example homework, I'd probably go EX HMWRK or something like that, because that's kind of says that word, right? But what I always suggest is you might do stuff like, I don't know, Unit 1, HTML, history, or something like that, and be really specific about what's in that file. Just in case you might happen to have another one in that folder that's similar, how are you going to differentiate them? You don't want to put yourself in the situation where you have to open the file to see what's inside of it, to know what it is. So my advice is be verbose with what you name things and be specific, okay? And then put them into place. So if I know that I had, let's say, 15 units of instruction and, God, where's my Unit 15 homework? Well, it's in the Unit 15 folder. So it makes it a whole lot easier to find it. I mean, it's akin to organizing a file cabinet. Or if you had a 3-ring binder that you're putting everything in, it's like putting it in the binder and then having tabs for each, logical breakdown. Now, I can't coerce you to follow good file management skills. I think that having them is its own reward. And I have certain strategies that I've used over time that I think work better than others. And I always like to push those upon students. Now, we will, as we go into the Web 1 class, and we're going to switch over here pretty soon, there's some additional things that we're going to do in this environment. But what I'm hoping that you do for this assignment is to go ahead and create that structure that I'm talking about in a way that works for you. And then, if you have it set up in a good way, like, so for example, mine's in my Documents folder. I can come over here to this little tree on the side and find that same folder. And then notice, you guys are wondering, how did I get that image? Well, I basically created the structure inside the folders first, and then I came over here and expanded everything, and then I took a picture of it. Okay, so now we got a secondary problem. How the heck do you take a picture of it, right? So what we call that technically is a screenshot. And sometimes with IT classes, one of the best ways to show your instructor what you did on your screen is to take a picture of your screen and then insert that picture into a document and then submit it to Blackboard. So what I'm about to do here, and don't worry, I will reiterate this as we go, is I'm going to show you how to submit this assignment. So let's say I have everything built out the way that I want it, and then I want to submit this work to show you that I've done it. So here's what I would do. First of all, and this is kind of silly, but read the instructions for the assignment. I think that's pretty helpful. I think I mentioned, if you want to earn an A in a class, look at what your instructor's asking for and give them exactly that, and that's how you get the A. So if you're asked to write an essay on history, you don't want to write one on sports, So what I'm asking you to do is actually look at the instructions carefully. So it says, create a useful folder structure for your schoolwork. And you guys notice that I have an assignment here. My tendency is that I have these little yellow flags that I put in here, so you can just quickly look in a unit folder and go, oh, there's the assignment, that's what I'll do. I do have to show you that other instructors, when they use Blackboard, sometimes are in a different mode. And I'm going to flip the switch here so you can see. So you go into some other course shells and you'll see these additional icons, right? So like anything that's informational looks like a piece of paper. And then anything that's an assignment has this like little like ruler and a pencil or a protractor or whatever that is on a piece of graph paper. And that's supposed to be your indication that it's an assignment. I don't find that adequate personally. So once again, I'm coming from a web designer standpoint. To me, that does not say assignment. You know what? This does though, because it says it right there. It says assignment. The other thing that I do is I usually code all my assignments so they match up. So if you're looking in your grade book and you go, which assignment or which unit was that in? Well, U1 stands for unit 1. That's my coding. And then I can find it quickly in the grade book, and you can identify it quickly in your grade book as well. And then to submit any assignment, you'll notice that the title of the assignment is a link. You just click on the link and then submit your work. We'll get there, but let's read the instructions first. So my pattern typically is I'll have that flag in there, and then usually in bold and green at the top of the listing. What is the point of this? What are we really doing? Well, this is what we're doing. We're going to create a useful folder structure for your schoolwork. Okay, at least in my opinion. All right, so it says follow these instructions to set up your storage for school files. Create a folder structure in the location where you will be saving your work for the course. Options might be your documents folder, flash drive, Google Drive, etc. However, can I tell you guys, the big secret in IT, never, ever, 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 ever use your flash drive as the primary spot where you're storing a file, ever. You guys hear me? And let me tell you why. I walk into classrooms all the time, and when I first started at Gateway, we actually had a policy. Every student had to have their own flash drive. And at the end of every class, people would get up and leave, right? Turn off their computers and stuff, and guess what I would find every time? Everybody's flash drives left in the machines, their only copy of their homework, and all of a sudden, you know, they're 45 minutes away in the car, they're not coming back, and good luck if it's there next week, you know. Of course, we would always scoop them up and save them and figure out who they belong to, but we live in an era now, folks, where you do not need flash drives. The only reason you need a flash drive is if you don't have like a network connection to send a file from one machine to another. And so we copy the files onto a flash drive, walk over to the other machine and plug it in. And flash drives do have their purpose. Don't misunderstand me, but you should never use them as primary storage. In fact, what I'd like to see you do in the long run is switch to a cloud technology. So you see like how I'm highlighting Google Drive. And the reason I'm highlighting that is because by virtue of being Gateway students and having a Gateway email account, which is really a Google email account, you also have attached to it, when you come up to this little waffle icon here, Google Drive. So all of you have free online storage that comes with your Gateway email account that you do not have to pay for, and in most cases has significantly more storage than any private ones that you would pay for. So like David, I'm looking at you. I know like a lot of musicians use Dropbox, for example, to share music files, right? And that's a great service, but it costs money, especially when you start to fill it up. Yeah. Google Drive attached to your school account is not like that. I think to start out with, you guys should probably go with your documents folder, or if you have another spot on your machine where you store stuff, go for it. Okay, so the next step is create one folder for each course, and I just did that before. For each course you're taking the semester, at the minimum, you should have Web Developer Orientation and Web Programming 1. All right, that we do. In each of those folders, create a nested folder structure to add a new folder for each unit up to Unit 15. Your finished structure will look something like this. So here's my example. Just the now when we use the word nested, that implies, and this is kind of a computer speak here, right? Nesting means that we're placing one thing inside of another. So in other words, Unit 1, 2, 3, 4, the ones that I have here for web orientation are nested inside the web orientation folder. And really, we're forming a hierarchy, but whenever you hear that term, that's what we're referring to. Now, step number 4 says use the snipping tool to take a screenshot of your folder structure. And I will show you that. And I see that I have a little legacy note in there that I should probably delete because I do not have a practice section for that. So please ignore that and I'll fix that later. And then after you take your screenshot, attach that to this assignment and submit. So I'm going to show you how to do this. So in Windows, we have a tool that allows us to take a picture of any part of the screen we want and capture it. And that's called the snipping tool. So I'm going to hit my start menu here. So I press the start menu button, or you can just come down here with your mouse and click. And then without doing anything else, you don't have to scroll through menus or look for that program. Just start typing that word. Just start typing S-N-I. So you see how mine just popped up? And if you might happen to have other programs that start with the same name, just keep typing and the Windows search function will automatically find that program. You can see it's a snipping tool and it's an app. So let's click that. And now I have this little interface. Now there is a possibility that some of you might already be using the newer tool called Snip and Sketch, and the interface is a little bit different. Is there anybody in that situation? Okay, that's good. So like with some of the latest Windows upgrades, they updated this tool to be a little bit more modern. I was goofing around with it a few weeks ago. And you know, frankly, I'm not comfortable with it yet, so I switched back to using the old one. But this interface is really all you need to do your work. So if this tool comes up, notice how we got all these different buttons here, but I'm going to make sure that I'm just going to click the new button, and I'm also going to make sure that the stuff that I want on screen to capture an image of is already there. Well, this isn't it, right? This is my example. I want the actual folder. So I would go here. Well, I would bring up my folder, wherever the heck that is. All right. It's being a little resistant here. Oh, there it is. See? I pushed it off to the bottom and I couldn't find it. And then let's say, well, actually, I was working here. So I'm in my GTC folder. Let's say I went through and created all those unit folders. And you can see there's just that area of the screen I want to capture. Really, all I want to capture is just this. You know, there's not much. So now that I have that up on screen, I'm going to click back to the snipping tool, click new. And then what you're going to see is the screen kind of grays out, right? Everything kind of becomes like there's an opaque filter over it or something. And then as I move my mouse, you notice how it's changed from a pointer to a crosshairs. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to find a spot and I'm going to click. So I've already clicked my mouse and I'm going to drag and then I'm going to highlight. And that looks pretty good to me. And then I'm going to unclick and now I have a picture of it. Isn't that cool? Right? And so whenever you hear an instructor asking, take a screenshot of, you know, whatever they're asking for, that's how you do it. Now there are other ways. So like if somebody happens to, let's say, be on a Macintosh has a tool called Grab. If you happen to be on a Linux machine, and that's pretty rare, but we do get those occasional students that are, the Linux machines also have their own proprietary tools. But on a PC, it's called Snipping Tool. On the Macintosh, it's called Grab. Okay, most of you will be using PCs. And you know, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, the IT world is very, very PC centric. Right. So now that I have it captured, I can do a couple different things. So I get some people that will go, well, I'll save it. Okay, sure, you can save it. So if you chose to save it, it would ask you to put it somewhere and give it a name. And so what might make sense is if you're putting it somewhere is maybe to put it in that folder you created. So you could maybe save it, go to the orientation class, go to Unit 1. And I know I kind of tend to do that quickly, so I apologize for that because sometimes I have to kind of put myself in first gear when I'm teaching. So go to Documents, go to your GTC folder, go to Orientation, and I'm double clicking each one of these folders to get there, and then into Unit 1, and then you can give it a name and save it. All right, and some people will do that. But I'm going to tell you what, you don't have to. So not to give you confusing information, because what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to hit the button here that's next to the save button, which is these two icons. And those two icons are trying to represent two pieces of paper. And what they're saying is I'm making a copy. So I'm just going to hit copy. And now that's kind of like stored in memory temporarily, waiting for me to paste it into some other environment. So I'm going to bring up Microsoft Word, and I'm going to create a new document. Now, I know some of you might not have Microsoft Office. Is there anybody in that situation?
No.
And I'll tell you what. All right, there's no worries on this, because I'm going to show you also another way to do this. First of all, you should know as Gateway students, you can get Microsoft Office for absolutely free. And what I might recommend is that you use the Office 365 version. I'll show you how to do that. We're going to actually have a whole session on that. But if you do already have Microsoft Word, you can just create a blank document. You can just come in here and paste it in. So you see what I just did? I just hit the paste button, and you can paste a few different ways. So I'm assuming that most people are familiar with copy paste, and if you're not, there's a number of ways to do it. So one really common way for people to do it is they right click and just do paste, and they hit one of the icons there and the image comes in. Another way that people will do it is they use shortcut keys. So I'm holding down the Control key on my keyboard and pressing the letter V, and that also is paste. And some of you might know that and some of you might not. But so the CTRL button plus the V equals paste. And then Control plus C is copy. And then Control plus X is cut. And then, you know, out of all of these, you know what the most useful shortcut key is? It's this one.
Ctrl Z.
Yeah, you got it. Who said that? Right. Control Z is undo. And I always tell people, this is the beauty of IT, right? Like if you were studying nursing and you gave the patient the wrong medicine, oops, they're dead, right? There's no undo for that. We're in IT, there's always an undo. And so any action you take on the screen, chances are your program, if you hit Control and the Z button at the same time, it'll undo what you just did. In fact, watch. See? And then here's the beauty. There's also a redo. A lot of people don't know that, and that's Control Y, by the way. So those, I think, are pretty helpful. All right, but that's kind of the technique I would use. I would bring up the snipping tool. You get the thing you want on the screen. You bring up your snipping tool, click New, grab it, make a copy, and then paste it into a document. The other thing that you guys might opt to do is attach to your Gateway email account. If you don't have Microsoft Word now, you can go into your email and come up to your little Google Apps icon. And some of these will call that icon different things. I hear people calling it the waffle icon, you know, or the apps icon. But this, you know, series of little dots up here takes you to all your Google apps. And then you can see you can go right to Docs, or you can go right to your Drive. Either one will get you there. I'm going to go right to Docs. And look what it does. It gives me a chance to create a document. Notice I'm not opening software. I'm just doing this right in my browser. I'm going to create a blank document. And you know what? I can Control V right here too. Okay, and there's my document. Now, usually if you're doing homework like this and you're showing me a screenshot, I always tell people, you know, this is homework technically, so it's maybe not a bad idea to put your name on it, you know, or like what class it's for. Those are good things. And in some cases, I mean, you can date it if you want. That's up to you. But you could just say, you know, Unit 1 homework, file and folder structure. I think we called it something like that. And you can see I'm just like typing very poorly this morning. Google's about to fix it for me, but I'm fixing it myself. And I always tell students, you know, you don't have to make it really fancy, just get the information in there. But I always appreciate this. So if you're like working on something and you say, well, here's my work, everything went well, no problems, Or in some cases, oh my God, this was a nightmare. You know, and you know, some people will make it bold and then they'll turn it red just to get my attention, you know. But I love it when you do your homework like this and you put comments inside of it and you tell me how things went, you know, like whether it worked or not. And in some cases, if you're working on something and it's not completely right, tell me, you know, and that way when I'm grading it, that it's stuff like that that I look for to say, okay, well, you didn't get it quite right. Why don't you do it again? And there's no late penalty, you'll get the points. But that's a really important thing. So let's say we're all done with the homework. We got the stuff in there the way we wanted it. It's probably not a bad idea to give the document a title. So maybe Unit 1 homework. Now, the beautiful thing about working with the Google Documents, and we'll review these as well, is it automatically saves. You guys, if you look right here, it says last edit was a few seconds ago. If I type a couple of spaces in there and you watch up here, notice it said save the drive already. It saves on the fly. You never have to remember to save it. It automatically saves. So one reason I like the Google Drive is that. Now, if you look at the instructions, I don't get really particular and tell you how to submit it. I don't tell you to submit a Word document, but sometimes you will be asked to submit a Word document. And in that case, you'd come up here to this menu, choose download, and then notice one of the options. Now, the reason we ask for that is kind of, it's pretty simple. Basically, the grading system inside of Blackboard will automatically show us Word documents, PDFs, Excel files, and a couple of other formats automatically. So when your instructor says, please submit your screenshots in a Word document, they mean it, because then they can see them. Otherwise, they're forced to download it, open it, and then open it in Word, where otherwise, if it's just submitted, I can just pull it up on screen right inside of Blackboard, give you the points, and move on. So it's kind of a combination of both following instructions for you and making it easier for your instructor to grade. And I'm just going to tell you, when it's easier for your instructor to grade, they tend to give you better grades. I mean, just think about it, because it's more of a hassle. But we're still always looking for making sure you do things right. And if part of the instruction is submitted in this format, then you should. Okay, so let's say I go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead and download this as a Word document. And you see how it dropped down to the bottom of my browser. So I'm using Microsoft Chrome, or excuse me, Google Chrome to do my surfing this morning, and that's where it puts its downloads. If you're using Firefox or Edge, it'll have a different interface for it. But typically, you can go to your file folder and find the downloads, and you'll find them usually in a couple of spots, but I can also find that file there. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back to the course shell, and to submit the homework, I would simply click the file management title here, the link in blue, and you'll get this interface that pops up. Okay, you'll see the instructions are repeated, and then you have this. And let me show you how this works. This is kind of interesting. First of all, if I have my file folder just sitting there, I can actually, and I apologize for that, just drag and drop the file. So you see I'm clicking on it, and then I'm not letting go of the mouse button, dragging it over, and then releasing it right on top of that box. And you see how it turned purple? That attaches it to the assignment. And for me, that's probably the easiest way to do it. I love it. The drag and drop is beautiful, and it's simple to do. The other way you can do it, of course, is you can click the buttons here. And so most of you would choose this. So for example, you'd go to your computer, you would navigate to wherever that file is located. And I don't think I didn't save it there. In fact, it's in the downloads folder, right? And then click the button and it attaches. If you find that you attach something you didn't need to attach, see how it says do not attach here? You can just click that and it'll remove it. And then if I go back down there and look, you'll see that second one is gone. Another thing that's kind of helpful is you can always add a comment here. And and maybe just type into this box, and you could say, this was fun, if you really feel that way. You don't have to, but I always find it helpful to have a comment or two. And then some cases, instead of just writing a comment, you can also, if you want to get a little bit more verbose, click this button up top here, the Write Submission button, and then that will pop up this text editor window. And then here, once again, you can type in a message, but the beauty of this interface is I can also, highlight it and make it bold or italics, or, change my fonts and, make it obnoxiously large and hideously ugly, all at the same time. I can even go as far as, adding pictures in here or web links or any sort of weird thing. Now, when you're submitting, when we get to the Web 1 class, we will be submitting links to websites at some point. This is the interface you're going to use, and we'll repeat that. All right, so once you're all done with everything, you would hit your submit button, but I do want you to notice, and a lot of students miss this, that there's also a draft button. So like if you're not quite ready to turn it in yet, you got a couple more things you want to type up, or oh shoot, I forgot that other document. You can hit save draft, and it will save it. Now, for me, notice it says it's not saved because I don't have the capability to turn in homework. I'm a teacher, I can only grade it. But for you, it would save, and then when you went back, you could complete it. But once you hit that submit button, it will show up in Blackboard for me, and you will get a little yellow circle in your grade book that shows that it's waiting to be graded. And eventually that will get replaced with a score. Now, I typically set up all my assignments so that you can submit multiple times. So let's say you turn something in, you go, oh shoot, I forgot part B. You can go back to the assignment, do another submit, add the piece that you're missing, and I will see that one too. And they usually set them so that you have at least like 5 chances to submit things before you have to ask for more. All right. Now I know this, for those of you that are brand new to Gateway here, which is most of you, this little process is a little overwhelming initially. You'll get used to it as we go. And for that reason, as we start out, my due dates are kind of lenient to start with. But if you get stuck on that, please let me know. All right. The other thing that I'm going to do for all of you that are here today in these sessions is, one thing that we're doing is we're using Zoom, and you guys notice that there's extra credit for using Zoom. So normally in the classroom, like if we were face-to-face, you don't have to use these tools, but since we're all online, I thought it would be a good thing if you can connect up to any one of our Zoom sessions, you automatically get an extra credit point. So I'm going to go through as soon as we're done here and make sure everybody gets their extra credit point. And normally you would follow the instructions to do that. But if you read these instructions really carefully, it says there's nothing to submit. You just have to ask for the extra credit. Okay, so that's what the instructions say. Those are really kind of the deliverables here. So the big one is set up some folders for yourself and then send me a screenshot. We'll get an extra credit point for Zoom. And we've been kind of using Zoom, and we'll get better with it as we go. But you'll notice I also have some useful links here. So if you're like brand new to like working with computers on like a professional level, it might not hurt to look at some of these videos and links and websites to get information to help you support that. This is just an orientation class, so it's not really, we're not going to like take 15 weeks just teaching you how to organize your files. Hopefully that is something you kind of get by osmosis as we move forward, but I am telling you that it's a very important skill. The other thing that I do want to mention to you in these courses and the unit folders that I set up is that I often have pre-recorded lecture videos. So now if you notice, I recorded this in the fall of 2019 when I taught the class in a classroom environment. And this is a live video lecture, and all of those, I'll just go ahead and bring it up on screen so you can see kind of what it's like. I will mute it. And so what I do with all my videos is I end up putting them on YouTube. Some of them are privatized, like our Zoom sessions will always, like if I record a Zoom, that will always be a private video. The world can't see it. But if I have a regular lecture like this one, the whole world can see it. You can go out there and look at all my lectures for all my courses. I really don't care. I mean, all you're gonna do is learn, so it's not gonna hurt you any, or hurt me for that matter. But I put them out on YouTube. The nice thing about YouTube is everything is closed caption. I know you guys can't hear the voice right now, but interact with each other. And I don't know if you guys have ever done like a Google Hangout for friends or anything. Usually people will chat or video call just to give you the point that you can do closed captioning. And then one of my favorite tools for watching videos, especially lecture videos, is I go to this settings tab here. Excuse me. And sometimes I take the playback speed and bump it up a notch or two. So it's like, man, this lecture is an hour long. If I speed it up, it can go a lot faster. Today is once you sign into the classroom, I'll go into the gradebook, drop in your point, you don't really have to do anything else. The people that now that's a little funny, honestly, but I'll tell you what, when I sit there and I watch tutorials online, sometimes it's like, hey, I kind of know this stuff already, so I make it go really fast. It's like, oh wait, you said something important, and they go back, slow it down, and then listen really carefully. So that can be a helpful tool, but I will have many of these lectures out there that are video recorded like this, and you might find it helpful, especially if you're struggling with any of these concepts, to go and watch the video when we're done here. And then you can take your time with it. You can rewind and you can play it again, and you can hang on my every word if you want. You really don't have to, but I do get students that do that. And I'll tell you what, it always floors me when I first started video recording myself, and I would be in the classroom with the students that did it, and I would record the videos for my online students because they're not there. And it would floor me that the people that were in the classroom also went home and watched the video. And I'm like, but you were there. Why would you watch a video? Oh, because I kind of wasn't paying attention or was on my phone, or, my stomach hurt, or, whatever the situation is. And that's what I really like about doing the videos. And I try to do it with every class, because then you have this like living record of what you did. And that's always more real than, to me, reading it in a book. So, all right. So just so you know, please take your time and do that. I'm going to switch this over now. We're going to jump over to our Web Programming 1 class. So try to get these tasks done. And then as we get to next week, we're going to be moving into a little bit more useful material for Web 1. You can see we're going to talk about file transfer protocol here in the orientation class, and a couple of other things. But going over to Web Programming 1, and here we are in this.
I have a quick question.
Yes, please.
Oh no, did I lose everybody?
We're all, we can hear you just fine, Justin.
I heard I lost audio completely in my do we have to use a snippet tool, or can we I use a Spring Presso, because I can do some fun things with it, but is that okay with you?
Oh, that's absolutely fine. The reason I point out the snipping tool, Justin, is because everyone has it. And I know that some people use like Snagit, or the tool that you're using, or there's many different tools that you can download to do screen grabs. But I'm a huge fan too of, like, if it's in the OS, why bother getting a third-party tool when really all I want is a quick image and I want to move on. But yeah, feel free to do it any way that works for you. The only thing that I kind of caution people on is when you are using the snipping tool, like if you're trying to show me, just this part of the screen, don't capture the whole screen. Capture just the part we need, especially if the type is really small. All right, so that's a great question though. Yeah, you can use any tool you want, and the truth is that extends to really any of the software we tell you to use. In some cases, you have to use certain pieces of software to do a task. You just don't have a choice because it's the only one that does it. In other cases, as you're going to see when we start working with some real HTML code, that you can kind of use any tool that works, and a lot of them work great. Now, I can tell you which ones I think are good ones to start with, but there's no way I can coerce you to do the work a certain way. Ultimately, you're going to find what works for you, and you're going to go with that, and more power to you, because I think that's fantastic. And that's really kind of how we evolve as IT people, is people explore certain tools, and they do that and when you latch on to something, it's because there's a reason for it, because it works, right? You're not going to like keep going back to something that doesn't work. You're going to try something else until you find the one that's best for you. All right, let's go ahead and kind of go through some of this. So now, when we did kind of our syllabus walkthrough the other day, there's some things that we talked about in orientation class and some things that we didn't. And the orientation class has a lot of time built into it where we kind of cover what I would call general topics, you know, so like how Blackboard works, why I put certain things where. But what I'd like to point out to you here is, you know, please read the syllabus for this class, and I'll bring it up really quick. I'm not going to do the walkthrough that I did with the other class, but please make sure to read this carefully. Look at the dates and times. The one thing that is probably, you know, the most important thing to understand is we are done by June 26th for web programming 1. That's really, really fast, you guys. I'm trying to give you a gentle introduction to this class, but by early next week, we're going to be like rolling full force. So, you know, buckle your seatbelts is kind of like a good way to look at it. The course description, we are basically going to learn what I call the two most important foundational languages for doing web work, and that's HTML and CSS. We will touch very, very briefly on JavaScript, a very quick look at it. But following the Web 1 course, you will have a full-blown JavaScript course. I believe you're taking that either with Christian or Christopher, and they'll dig into that technology real deeply. But in combination of those three languages, we call those the three languages that kind of glue the internet together. They make the internet work. HTML provides our structure and content. CSS provides the beautification of a page, you know, the look and feel of a page. And then JavaScript really is the programming language that makes the page do something. And those all are very important. Please make sure that you get this book as soon as you can. I know that there are older editions out there, and I'm gonna give you this as a caveat. If you find an older edition and you're gonna save a whole bunch of money, it's okay, go for it. The content is basically the same. There are some slight differences with the case studies, but they're so darn minimal. I always, you know, kind of think of like, you know, the pocketbook of the student. You know, why spend like $200 on a book when you can spend $50 on a book? And chances are you can probably find it electronically as well. So find the version that works for you. I know that some of the publishers are having problems with book deliveries right now. Fortunately, this is an Addison Wesley book. It's not a Pearson book, but Pearson, their online system is down right now and their delivery systems are down right now. So nobody's getting books from Pearson. So in terms of the equipment you need for this class, basically you guys are probably all fine already. You just need a decent modern computer with internet access, a bunch of different web browsers, some sort of a text editor, hopefully image manipulation software, FTP software, and if you have a mobile phone or a tablet laying around to check your work, those are helpful too. There's nothing in terms of software that you really have to pay money for, although some software packages that, you know, I can argue are better than others do cost money, but most of the tools you need to do web work are completely free. No reason to spend money. And if they're not free for the consumer, they are free for a student. So that's the beauty of it. All right, so that's just kind of the quick overview of the syllabus. The rest of it is pretty boilerplate, similar to the other one. Same grading system, 100-point scale, same late work policies, like we talked about with web orientation. The other thing I kind of throw into these course shells as well is this little instructor information. And now normally when I'm in the classroom, I have like all my days and times in which classrooms I'm in all listed in the middle of that screen there. And unfortunately, that's all canceled for the semester, like it was for the end of spring. But this is a list here of all the classes I'm teaching this summer. They're all online. And of course, any ones that have the FSC is the full stack certificate that you guys are currently in. That's the orientation in Web 1. But I'm also teaching all of these other technologies as well. All right. It also has my contact info here. The contact info is always inside the syllabus, by the way, if you ever need to reach me. And you always have this email link on the sidebar that you can click on too to send me an email. email typically is the best way to reach me. My office phone, unfortunately, is an hour south of me in Racine, so it doesn't. I'm not going to run down there and pick it up, but I do get the voicemails in my email. And Charlie, I know, like, you called me the other day, and the reason I couldn't answer is, first of all, my phone is ringing in Racine, and secondly, I was doing one of these sessions with this group here, and that's why I took till the afternoon before I responded to your message. And it's not that I was ignoring it, but usually when I see a message pop in, I get right on it as fast as I can. Now, please keep in mind that I also have a life outside of school. So, I have a wife and kids, and, the honey-do list and all that stuff that goes with it. And anybody that's married totally knows what I'm talking about. So I'm not always online. So don't expect that if you're asking me a question at like midnight that you're going to get a response. So sometimes you do, but it just really kind of depends on what I'm doing and where I'm at. But given that it's summertime, we do get out and about quite a bit. So with safe social distancing, I'll put that in there too.
I understand.
Right. Kind of hard to stay inside the house when it's beautiful outside. All right, let's jump into Unit 0 here and rifle through a couple of things. So we talked about the book. Please make sure you get that. In my mind, if you got the 7th or 8th edition, that would probably work well too. I think they might have released or are about to release a 10th edition, but we're still formally on the 9th edition. One thing that I think is really cool about the author of this book is they're a Wisconsin native. In fact, the person, Terry Felke Morris, lives up in Door County. So I think that's really cool. So you'll see that some of the examples she uses in her book are Wisconsin centric. And it's like, hey, right on, kind of cool to, use materials from somebody local. I always appreciate that. I have my introduction here, same material that we had over in the other course. And then I do have the recording from the other day listed here as well. All right, syllabus acknowledgement. And then at some point, I'm going to go through and update my course calendar to show you how quick it moves. But this is kind of an example of what you guys are going to see, how quickly we're going to start popping through these units. We're going to probably average, 3-4 units a week. Now, normally I would do 1 unit a week with my classes. So that's kind of the intensity shift. Because a lot of the homework is based on the book, make sure you get the book as quick as you can. Otherwise, you will have some issues getting homework done. What I do, if you do get into a situation where you don't have the book and you can't see what the case studies are in particular, please let me know, because worst case scenario, I can at least do a screen grab of my ebook or whatever I can. It would get the description to you so you can do the work. You don't want to sit there and not be doing the homework. You're going to fall behind quick. So in my mind, it might make a lot more sense to buy an ebook, because your ebooks you can get instantly. So always keep that in mind. In terms of hardware and software, we do have a recommendation for people in our web program as to what machines and capabilities they should have. And so we get people that come in and they say, well, I'm coming to school and I'm going to do this for a living. What kind of computer should I buy? And you're not going to walk into Walmart. So this is kind of one of my standard lines. You're not going to walk into Walmart and buy that $299 laptop or the Chromebook that's really affordable and looks like a great deal. Because I'm going to tell you what, it's actually not a good deal. That machine's going to last you a couple, 2-3 years. You're going to get frustrated with it being slow. You're not going to have all the capabilities you need, and it's got a build quality that goes along with its price. So it's going to fall apart. But what I would recommend is, if you look at this list of instructions and recommendations, and right now I'm even going to say that this is probably a little dated. You'd have a hard time finding a machine with Windows 7 anyhow, or Windows 8. Pretty much at this point, you should be looking at Windows 10. Now you'll notice that I actually have a Windows version recommended. We'll talk about this more in the orientation class, but most people, when they buy a consumer computer, it will come loaded with Windows 10 Home, which is like the standard version of Windows that we all know. However, those versions of Windows are limited and do not have some of the same capabilities that the professional or education versions have, which, professional education essentially say the same thing, except the pro version you pay for and the education version you get for free. In the orientation class, not today, but in that orientation class, I will show you how to get the education version installed on your machine for free, and very easily. It's a pretty simple process, actually. Microsoft gives it away to anybody in education. You just have to know where to look, and I'm going to show you guys where to look and get that. But we need something with a good, powerful CPU. An i5 at a minimum is my thinking these days. And 8 gigs of RAM as a bare bottom minimum. We used to recommend 4, but the reality is, I think the new working standard for IT pros is you need to be at 16 gigs of RAM plus. Now I've been at that level on my machines, going on 8-9 years now. So I can't even imagine backtracking to like a 4 gig machine. Now, I know a lot of people only have 4 gigs or maybe 8 gigs, but if you're buying something new, my starting point would be 16, right? In terms of a hard drive, you're going to need at least a 500 gig hard drive. And the reason I say that is when you start moving into some of your other courses, especially if you go into the full degree program later, we have some pieces of software that take 100 gig plus just for one piece of software. It doesn't take a genius to figure out that you're going to fill up that hard drive real quickly. And then in that case, my recommendation is get a terabyte hard drive, which is twice that size, and an SSD if at all possible, just simply because the performance is so much better with an SSD. I always tell students that this laptop that I'm using here today, which is actually kind of an old one, when I bought it, it had a standard hard drive in it, and once you get all your software loaded up and you boot the machine up, it would take me 4 or 5 minutes for everything to boot, load up, and get to the point where I could actually do something. Same software configuration with an SSD, 20 seconds to boot and full functionality. And that impact, the impact on performance that had, it just astounded me how fast a solid state drive really is. So it really is worth the extra money. Now, the reality is that if you're going to get a machine of this level, it's probably going to cost you in the range of at least $800 to $900 or more. Usually you end up in the 4-figure range to get a decent machine. However, you will get a much longer life out of that machine than that $300 laptop, and a lot more capabilities. Another thing that if you are really shopping for a laptop, the other thing is you need to look for this. We don't use it, like I say here, in the certificate program, but when we get to the later parts of software development, some of the things we do are done in emulation. So for example, we would learn how to write mobile apps. And when you write mobile apps, you have to be able to test them. And then you create a virtual mobile phone on your computer to test your app right on your computer. We also use it for other things as well, but that's kind of a necessary thing. That's another one of those features that those budget laptops often do not have. So if you learn how to do gaming, mobile programming, work with any other operating system, that's an absolute requirement. And then software, I think we already talked about that, and we'll detail it as we move forward. All right, that's just kind of the intro to the Web 1. And what I would like you guys to do now is go to Unit 1 here. And once again, I'm going to show you what you're going to be doing. Now, I'm not going to have a chance here because I have another Zoom starting in 8 minutes, all right? Just so you guys are aware of like the time frame to run through this content with you. But I do have everything videoed, so you can see that from, well, these are a little dated, but you know what? All this stuff is still pertinent. And what's going to happen here is I'm going to give you a course introduction. You go through the syllabus, how I grade things, how we do things, another video on how to submit your homework. And then video number 3 talks about FTP. Now, if I would stop anywhere, I would maybe stop there, because what we're going to do next Tuesday when we get together, because we'll do a Zoom on Tuesday at 10 o'clock, I hope everybody can do that, is I'm going to set up FTP accounts for everybody, and I'm going to show you how that works. But there are some other activities here that you can perform before next week. So the first thing I want to do is kind of give you, let's just scroll down and see, there's 3 assignments in this unit. And the first one is a pretest from a site called W3 Schools. The second one is thinking towards the future. And what I mean is, at the end of the Web 1 course, I want you to have created some sort of a website that you created as opposed to one that you picked up from a tutorial. So maybe you have an idea. So I'll just give you an example. I have, I play some music and I have a band, and, I think it would be really cool to have a website, for example. Or maybe I do dog rescue and I want to put up a website that has, a website for dog rescue. Or maybe I'm going to start a business mowing lawns and I want to have a landscaping website. Some sort of an idea like that is what I'm shooting for. So if you could just read through this and just think of, like, basically brainstorm a few ideas of, like, what kind of website you might want to build. And the goal of that is for me to help you kind of decide which one to work on that's actually feasible to do during this course. You're obviously not going to build like Amazon.com in this course. You're going to build something pretty simplistic. So I'm going to help guide you on that. But we want to start looking at what you might do. In addition, we'll have the FTP assignment, but this one you're going to need to be coached on, because this is kind of a more challenging task, frankly, is how to manage your files and put them on a web server so you can actually see your stuff on the web as you're creating it. And that's a pretty important thing for web people. So complete these first 2, and then this FTP upload will work on Tuesday. Now, I want to go back up to this pretest thing really quick. And I want to show you guys a site to get started with, to start your explorations. There's a website out on the web called W3 Schools. And you see I'm just typing that into my browser address bar and letting Google search it for me. And the website address is w3schools.com. Now, what's important about this website is W3 stands for www, by the way. And the people that put this site together are the people that establish the standards for all the web languages that we use and are about to learn. And as you look at the website and you land there, it's like, wow, learn HTML, learn CSS, learn Bootstrap. I guess I don't have to go to Gateway, right? Well, yes, there's some great tutorials here. And honestly, this is a site I go to often. Like, if I'm like, how do you do that little bit of code? You can't remember everything, folks, right? So you end up having sites like this where you have a guide, or kind of like almost like reference material. And that's really what the site is a reference site. So you can see that they have an HTML reference here. They also have these guided tutorials. And one of my real fun things is they have these little try it yourselves, where they brings up the screen, and then, like, you can type stuff on this side of the screen, hit the run button, and it puts it on the other side of the screen. Isn't that cool? So this is a great way to practice some basic HTML concepts and not have to load a darn piece of software to do it. And it's all free. But what's kind of fascinating here is with the W3 site, I have a link to these 3 quizzes. Now, let me explain why I'm doing this. Sometimes I do get people that come into this course that have done some of this before, but they never learned it correctly and want to learn it correctly, right? So I always say, well, what do you think you know? Might have to unlearn a few things and then learn it the right way, or learn the new way to do it. Because these things do evolve over time. But these quizzes, for me, are a way not to grade you on anything. You're not getting graded on the score. You're just getting graded for actually having done it. So I would just want to see where you're at. So typically what I'll see is with people who take these quizzes, and I'll just click through to the first one. And then you see start the quiz. And then you get these questions. Okay, what does HTML stand for? And then you choose your answer. And just by the way, this is the right answer on that one. There's a series of, I don't know how many questions. You go through and you answer it, and you get a score at the end. When you get the score at the end, I want you to take a screenshot of it and tell me what that score was. So what I'm hoping to see is, maybe you'll only score like 30% or something, something like that because you're new to it, or maybe even lower, who knows? I mean, there's no judgment on it. If you don't know the stuff, why does the score matter? But then what we'll do is at the end of the course, we're going to take these same series of tests, and I think you will surprise yourself how many of you will probably go from like a 20, 30, 40% score up to like a 70, 80, or 90% score, showing you that you really learned a lot in even the few short weeks that we've done this. And that's kind of the average that I see with people, is they'll go from like, I don't know, a 35 to like a 75. Right, so it has nothing to do with the score. But if you can go through those, take each one of these. You notice the JavaScript one is optional. Take at least the first two. Answer as best you can, screenshot the results, show me what you have, and then do the project planning. When we get together on Tuesday next week, we're going to talk about a couple different things. The first thing that we're going to talk about is FTP. And it's going to be a topic in both of these classes. So I'm going to set you up with accounts and make sure everybody can connect and transfer files. After that, we're going to actually go and start digging into our basic HTML skills. In the meantime, before Tuesday, I'm going to be releasing Unit 2. I'll just give you a little bit of a preview of what happens there. But you can see all the topics, choosing an editor, talking about some useful sites, and then we're going to start manually going through and learning all the basic HTML tags. And we'll do that during our session next week. Okay. Now, once I have the unit released, you guys are going to notice, you see all the videos I have already created. Once the videos or the unit's released, you'll have access to these videos where I step through each chapter's material in very, very granular detail. It's kind of like having the book, walking through, and having somebody show you exactly what the book means, not just reading it. So reading is important, but also seeing how it actually works, I think, is important. And then getting it to work for yourself, even more important. And then that's why I'm here, is to help guide you to get you to that point. So that's our quick little preview. Now, I'm going to have to wrap up here because I'm expecting that we have some of our Python people are jumping into the session now. In fact, I see a couple of them jumping in. So people that are, hi Python people, I'm gonna pop out of screen sharing mode here, and I'm also going to stop the recording so we can, I guess, talk normal.